Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. This is Paolo, and this is another very interesting episode of Conversation Artificial Intelligence. So today we're going to look into the world of analytics and how companies, small and large, are looking into leveraging analytics and how analytics is evolving. Now, before I go any further, if you are new to the channel, it is an honor and privilege to have you here. If you're coming back, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to host you once more. So why the discussion that we're going to have today is important? It is important because you see business intelligence has been a crucial point in the development of many functions inside companies, from how they go about capturing customers, how they go about serving customers, to all the way to optimize a number of operations. Now, with the new frontiers in artificial intelligence and machine learning, additional technology becomes available. And today you're going to learn what's possible for companies of all sizes with our guest, Ghassan Matar, who is a veteran of analytics. He has worked as SAP for many years and currently works and leads analytics at the Ernie Ford Medical System. And he's based in Detroit, a city where I lived when I was doing my MBA. And so, Ghassan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Paolo. How are you?
I am great and happy as always. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
So, Ghassan, before we go into analytics and start talking about, like all the details and how companies should, organize their analytics and getting insights and blah, 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 why don't we go back to high school when you were, a teenager? It's just you had a bunch of friends. So you go back and you introduce yourself. What do you tell your friends about what you have been doing in the last 20 years?
Oh, Paolo, this is the easiest actually answer to do. Thanks for the artificial intelligence marketing efforts for the whole world. I'll just say, hey, I am the artificial intelligence guy in analytics, and they will know easily what I'm doing. That's one thing. And I would say the second thing, I'm still playing around, love to laugh, and stubborn to say this is something impossible, and spread the can-do spirit with my colleagues and coworkers and classmates in the high school.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So where I'm going is my passion is to when I used to be a kid to play with puzzles. So it always, I think, applies to me at this point, where when I used to play with puzzles when I was a kid, it was just to make the picture and go with a harder puzzle and make it more hard on me to make the full picture. Right now, it's not that much of difference, in my opinion, from the principle, where I play around with the AI technologies and all the advanced analytics tools to kind of make a big picture, but at this time at the value for the organizations and for the value for the technology as well.
Okay, so you're pretty focused around the analytics world. Then, given that, let's dive into it. But before we dive into it, let's give people like kind of an overview. How would you say that analytics is used today by different players in the market? So, for example, companies that are traditional companies, they're not really tech savvy, and they have traditional operations, versus companies that are more, if you like, tech savvy.
So definitely it's different from each organization to another, in my opinion. There are multiple levels for analytics where you started with the descriptive analytics, where it's just say, hey, what happened? And you go for diagnostic, where why this has happened, and then you go for predictive, what will happen in the future, and then you go for prescriptive, like you should do this or you should do that. Now, the trick part of this equation, where I think a lot of organizations kind of do not really recognize, is that ladder of diagnostic to predictive to prescriptive it doesn't eliminate the previous stages where, for example, if you want to do predictive, you have to go through descriptive and you have to go through diagnostic, and then you can do the predictive so you understand what is happening from a business perspective. From an organization's perspective, I think definitely the organization that has the cutting edge or the lead from a business perspective, they're always going with investments with cutting edge technologies like AI. For example, in healthcare is one of the biggest examples of using or leveraging AI technologies, going through the very famous example of cancer diagnosis, or even from healthcare payers perspective, where they're actually predicting what's your probability to get sick in the next year, or what is your probability to have some social or depression that related to social determinants, for example. And then the value of the healthcare payer comes to determine or to help you manage your health and help you not to go through these tricks, or warn you to say, hey, you should be careful of this and this and that. So they kind of manage your health or help you manage your health better, so you're actually more healthier and happier.
Ghassan, how much of this evolution has been possible because of the technology emerged in the last few years, such as, you know, the deep learning of the world, and how much of it is instead due to domain understanding, if you like, a better rationalization of data and ways of mining data with traditional techniques that might simply be just incremental step, not necessarily linked to technology evolution?
So definitely, I think the technology part of this is the driver, or I would say the enabler at this point, with one caveat though. So the progress that AI technology is made from a technical perspective is huge. The capacity, the processing, even the techniques and methodologies that we actually saw in the last 5 to 10 years in the AI technology and advanced analytics, it's humongous. Like, this is definitely the enabler, but with one concern, I always try to split these two. Enablers, which is the technology part, will not give you any advantage or any value without actually having two parts additional to it. Having the data, have it clean, have it prepared, have it governed, and also always you should start from the business value, the business strategy, the business use case, because I see a lot of people, they jump to conclusion where it's a, hey, we're going to come here to this organization and we're going to implement an AI technology for you. And we always ask for what? What is the value? What is the purpose? What is the business value that we will have to it? And why we're going to implement that? It's just AI, man, came as a, like, it became a suitcase expression or a buzzword that everyone is just throwing this and say, if you implement AI technology, then you're going to be good, which is not always the case.
So Ghassan, looking into this, the same with a lot of new technologies, usually there are like technology in search for an application sometime. Do you yourself or someone that you know has experienced a situation where, let's say, implementing artificial intelligence didn't give any benefit? And if yes, can you describe it and explain where the failures were?
Absolutely. I did hear many stories about that. So here's one of the examples that I actually had through that. So one of the companies reached out and they say, hey, we can actually have a machine learning model that will be actually implemented that can help you manage like health plans that we have. And we actually, it was actually a value add project where they actually have determined and predicted to us which plans and which kind of settings that are more aligned with the customer satisfaction and how we can actually gain more customer satisfaction for that. The trick that I think most of the AI implementation, or especially I would be more specific for machine learning projects that the people can fall into that trick is they go and they do all the work, they do the prediction models, they get the value, and they say these are the right plans or the right settings or whatever that gonna give you more customer satisfaction. It ends up in a recommendation list or a PowerPoint presentation that is never or will never make it to be integrated in the business process and how we're actually gonna drive more value from it. So my point is there's a lot of projects that just end up being knowledge, but not fully integrated in the whole cycle of AI implementation. They end up being just waste of time and money.
And so, and in a case like this, just if we dive a little bit more, in a case like this, where is the disconnect? Is the fact that the vendor doesn't own the technology stack, or it's the fact that the solution that they're proposing, the payoff wouldn't be high enough for implementing it?
It's more, in my opinion, about the organization adoption, Paolo, because you need to get all your stakeholders aligned with the project, meaning all the business owners and the business processes and the business leads has to commit for a change, because the AI revolution and the machine learning, it's, for me, it's more of a culture change and business change. It's all about change, something different you're gonna do, something you're gonna change. If you do not have all these stakeholders aligned to your change that is going to come as a result of any AI technology or machine learning and integrate that, then that's where the problem is. I don't think there is a lot to do with the vendors that actually implemented that solution. It's more about the organization willing to adopt for change, and in another word, to kind of shift more towards data-driven or data-informed kind of setting, other than just the regular old gut feeling kind of management and leadership.
So, but you see, we have had now business analytics for at least 20 years, if I'm not wrong. Business analytics is not a new thing per se. So where do you see the divide between data-driven decision-making or just an informed decision-making, and how you define these two approaches to make decisions?
I think the division here, Paolo, is more on data literacy. And when I say data literacy, like the organization as a whole has to they should start working and actually talking and communicating in the terms of data. Data knowledge, and when I say data knowledge, I mean understanding the data across the organization and understand the data that is gathered even from outside sources like social, or even like data get introduced to the mix. Now, the data itself, if you have your business analysts understanding these data very well, then the informed decision will happen after that. Now, I think that is the trick. If we have a very well understood data from the business analyst, I don't think they will be opposed to kind of go to the data-driven approach. So I think that is the key. The data, there are too much data in the mix, and there is very little information and knowledge out of this data. So that is where the maturity level has to go in order to reach to a data-driven organization, and especially at the management and the leadership level.
So, but where do you think the disconnect is the fact that the technologists do not fully understand the business drivers, or we simply do not have a technology that can, manipulate the data to extract insights in a way that is meaningful for human beings?
I think multiple factors, but if I would have to pick one, I would say it's the analytical skill set with resources. It needs to be kind of improved in many organizations, I would say, at this point, because having that critical analytical thinking that will give you more curiosity, I would say, to dig deeper with the data. I think that's where the disconnect is. I don't think we have enough people that will follow this approach and go deeper with that in many of the organizations. There's, of course, a lot of organizations basically built over the analytics and having this skill set available. That's all what they do. But in regular industries, I think the most critical disconnect is having the right skill set in place. It will make a huge difference.
I would like to go a little bit more on kind of designing one of the systems, trying to understand what's happening. Up to 5 years ago, the buzzword in the market was big data. And so this ability for company to pull data from all the various sides of the organization, plus the organization interaction with the media, and even media outlets that we're not specifically talking about them, but about others. So today, the buzzword is artificial intelligence, which basically is an application layer on top of those data. Can we look maybe at one of the projects you have done? And what I'd like to understand is today, basically, how is an analytics project being, structured, and how much of effort goes into the data structure creation, if that is still part of what companies are going through, and how much of it is instead going into creating the analysis layer, and maybe trying to understand also the criticalities in the decision process.
Absolutely. So that's a very big question, actually. There's multiple factors there. So I will pick specifically with machine learning parts because there's multiple different areas in the AI. So I'll be more specific about machine learning. The most important thing about machine learning exercises or projects, in my opinion, is you start with at least a very high level idea about what you are trying to accomplish. The tricky part, though, when you go and try to dig deeper with the data, so the process technically, 80% of the time or the effort is actually going to prepare the data, defining sources of data and cleaning the data and merge the data and denormalize the data to make it ready for the analytical, the statistical models on top of that. I would say that is preparing the data is the biggest part. Defining the sources, what they're trying to do. The tricky part is it's always iterational and discovery, meaning you're thinking you're going that direction, and then you end up to another path. You thought that you're going to go and you predict the reasons why you're spending that much in this area or in that product. You start there, you're tracking your way to that way, and then you have a discovery, and it always kind of deviates you from that direction and say, oh, actually, I discovered something else. I actually need to go this way and cancel that track. That is the trick of it. But it's always worth it, in my opinion, because there's always one golden nugget that you're actually trying to find where it is. Maybe you start with that direction, but you end up with a little bit different direction, maybe close enough, but not the original way. So that is where the process goes.
I see, but for any company, this means that they have anyhow made an investment. What type of database you use, what type of search technology you use, and so on. Those are things that requires both an investment in terms of acquiring them, both an investment in terms of having your people getting to the proper level of skill set for managing it. So the experimentation model then it might pose some challenges. Where is that optimal, where the experimentation model works? Is it more on the algorithm levels, or you're thinking of experimenting also on the data integration, all the elements where the data are pulled? So where do you think it is still valuable to do the interaction?
I will go back with this question to Gartner model, which is the mode 1 and mode 2. They call it the bimodal. I would say there are two paths. So if you go back to the history a little bit, Paul, is the companies and the organization already invested like years ago, tens of years, like 20 or 30 years ago, with the concept of the data warehousing, where they're trying to collect all the data from all over the organization and also externally in one centralized or multiple centralized kind of areas. That investment already, in my opinion, that's a long-term investment. The data is there. It's going to stay there. It's not going anywhere. And the return of investment, unfortunately, for data warehouses, it's actually, there's no ROI of collecting the data. The ROI comes when you're getting insights and using the data on top of that from what historically was the reporting layers from a description analytics, but newly is the data mining. So the experimentation mode, I would say it's mode 2, which will definitely source out of the data warehouses that organizations already have, but that is not enough today. So I would say mode 2, which is the experimentation, data discovery, and statistical analysis on top of that, will lever the old the old investments in the warehouses, but will also bring new sources to the mix. Now, in my opinion, or the way how I think that should be, that experimentation mode, it should be driven by the business value, meaning we have a team, we dedicate that level of investment in for a certain product. They go, they play around with the data, they start to do their statistical models on top of that. Once we reach the data, now to standardize this data back to the warehouse or keep it over there, it will be actually determined by how much value we actually get. Is it worth to invest money to kind of get the new sources of data integrated with our data or not? It's, in my opinion, how much value we're going to gain from our experiment. If it's really a huge number of value, then we may need to reconsider getting and integrating this data back. So if that answers your question.
I think it does. One thing that we could do is actually look into one of these projects for healthcare. You mentioned in the beginning that today it's possible to predict if somebody might potentially get sick and why, and maybe give some feedbacks. So can you maybe walk us through this use case into more details and looking at it, maybe not super technical, but some level of technical, but also trying to define how deep the use case penetrate, if you like, the customer base. I mean, it's something that works for the 1% or the 30% or the 100%, and who makes the decisions then to make business decisions around the intelligence of the predictions?
Sure. So this is a very, I would say, common case, I would say, with health insurance companies, where they're trying to actually predict the possibility of somebody will go to or leverage healthcare hospital. Now, the factors there are, it's different. Like each healthcare insurance company has their own strategic drivers. So It depends. Are they actually, is their strategic goal is to make more money, or their strategic goal is to actually uh, make people more healthy, or to make their customers happy? Every company has their own strategy. So the way how I will talk about it, it's mainly how to make, if the strategy is how to make people more healthy and to kind of invest in their health, so in the long run, they will actually, you will have more healthy population. Now, where I'm seeing this example is there are something called social determinants. So social determinants, there's a lot of information and data that you can actually define for your members. How many times they actually get contact with people they love, how they see, how much they see family, how old are they, all these kind of social information has uh, a lot of studies from a healthcare perspective that says, hey, if you're talking to people on a regular basis, you have more friends, you actually interact socially with people, most probably your health will be a little bit better than people who are in um, some kind of depression, or they're not active socially, you know what I mean? So that case where you collect this data, and there are some models that kind of score these people. Now, the driver again is what you're going to do with this data. If you are going to go and score these kind of members, and you have a wellness program or a care management program that will take care of these people who have high score of, because of their social setting, there's actually some kind of help they need, then there are some people will go and talk to these people and tell them, hey, how we can help you? Did you talk to your family this week? Or how's it going? And try to kind of help them a little bit understand, or kind of try to push a little bit of social aspects or social activity towards them, so their score will improve in the long run.
I see. So our time is somewhat limited. Before we conclude, I wanted to look for a second into what we said before about managers becoming aware of both the technology and the type of insights that can be derived. I think two areas there that are relevant are first the broadcasting of what analytics can do and the projects that have been done. And the second is somewhat education. Can you talk about real experiences that you have gone through and shifts that you have seen by, adopting some specific strategies in these two areas?
Absolutely. This is, again, if I go back a little bit with one of the points I raised, is the skill set, like how you want to make people more aware about how to do the analytics, and not to do the analytics, but do it also right. In my opinion, is the knowledge of this analytics. The more the people talk, or your organization resources talk and understand more about how to perform this kind of analytics, or where are the data exist, or how to get access to it, or what this kind of uh, uh, data knowledge means, or what are the things that I should avoid when I do this kind of analytics. This kind of level of knowledge, they are very specific at the organization level, how they're actually they're forming their data, how they're actually storing the data. This is very unique situation, or very unique knowledge, only exists at each organization level. Now, the flip side of that, which is very common across all the organizations, is how to push this knowledge. And I've been and talked to a lot of my coworkers and colleagues and friends in the analytics area, and almost every successful leader in this area mentioned there was some kind and some form of technology they used to kind of push that knowledge and engage the analysts across the organization to gain that knowledge. Now, we know the AI technology is coming and it's coming fast, and it's already here with a lot of knowledge sharing technologies like chatbots, uh, uh, sharing collaboration tools as well. Some of the organizations that I know, they were going and making every single analyst in the organization active to generate that knowledge. But what they put the technology platform on top of that to make that knowledge very easy and instantaneously accessible. And one of these forms I actually like, it's the chatbot. They created chatbots that understands natural language processing, and they actually, anyone wants to do any kind of analytics, in order to know what data they wanted to use, how they're going to use it, what are the kind of tricky situation or tricky analytics filters they want to use or to avoid. They're all documented, and everyone is going and talking to the chatbots either through natural language, Cortana, or like Siri, or even some of them. I heard that they even integrated with Google and Google Home and Echo, Amazon Echo. The data, the chatbots, they are there to help anybody wants to know analytics to get an instantaneous answer on how to access this data, what to avoid, what to do, where to find it. Now, the core thing is technology is the layer on top of that, but the core is the knowledge. That people have to kind of start documenting their knowledge and collaborate with each other to kind of make this more efficient. But will the technology make it easier? Absolutely, especially in the AI side.
That's, I think, very interesting. Basically, if I can summarize, there are bots today that can be used by people to ask queries, and basically the bot will drive the person while the person is trying to extract insights from a certain data. And that's, we've seen in large corporate, there are lots of players. It's not only the managers that are trying to get data, but it could be any middle manager or any employee that has a problem, and maybe that they're trying to do an analysis, and it's really kind of a battle every time, that especially if you have an occasional use and you want to answer to a question, either you go to talk to 100 people and like it wastes a lot of time, or you had to face some kind of software that you don't use it often, so it wastes a lot of your time. And so basically you're saying now people are inventing bots for helping people in that situation. So Ghassan, I think our time has come to an end, and it has been a pleasure having you here. For our audience, I wanted to say that if you have questions about this interview, and if you're interested to learn more from Ghassan, just comment below. If you have instead suggestions about new topics that you like to cover, we're more than happy to satisfy the suggestions. Just write down in the comments what those are. For the time being, Ghassan, it has been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much. Looking forward to keep in touch.
Thank you, Paolo. I appreciate your time as well.